Ah, my mic was muted. There we go. We're just waiting for the committee to start. And it's on.
Committee on Government Operations and Estimates, of course known as the Mighty Ogo, truly the only committee that matters. Before we start, everyone please, just a reminder, to keep your headphones away from your mics at all times, and do not touch the microphone either, please, to protect the hearing of our very valued interpreters. Before we start, we have Minister Duclos, welcome back, of course, but we have him only for 1 hour. I know we're always quite loose with our times, but I'm going to keep everyone exactly to their allotted time. So to prevent me from cutting you off or missing an answer, please watch your own clock. We'll now turn things over to Minister Duclos for 5 minutes for an opening statement. Welcome back, Minister, and your officials. The floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci de votre...
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the warm welcome on this beautiful Thursday morning. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to discuss the supplementary estimates for Public Service and Procurement Canada, as well as for Shared Services Canada for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. Please allow me to acknowledge that we gathered here on the traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe people and Algonquin people. Joined here by colleagues, the Deputy Minister Ariane Areza, Alex Béné, Associate Deputy Minister, Simon Page, Assistant Deputy Minister, Catherine Poulin, Assistant Deputy Minister, Marc Poulin, as well as Michael Hammond, Assistant Deputy Minister, Chief Financial Officer. And from Shared Services Canada, we have the President, Scott Jones, as well as Scott Davis, who is Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer. Mr. Chair, in the supplementary estimates, we're asking $841.7 billion as well as another amount for Shared Services Canada. Before I go into the details, please allow me discuss some of my priorities as well as those of my team and the progress that we've been able to make since my last appearance before this committee. First, government's plan to address the housing crisis by building 4 million extra housing, which is the most ambitious construction plan in Canada, and we are fast-tracking things. PSPC is doing its best in order to make sure that this is going forward, and we launched an initiative which includes 83 federal units, which will add to these construction units, and we will increase that number over the next months as we continue to assess the availability of public lands, excess public lands. As far as is possible, our government is reconverting its properties into affordable housing, not through unique sales, but spreading out the payments in order to make it more affordable and ensure that public lands remain public. In the meantime, Mr. Chair, we recently had a milestone in order to make dental care services more affordable for admissible and eligible Canadians. And to date, over 1 million Canadians have been able to receive dental care as part of this plan, and over 3 million Canadians have been able to secure a membership card, and participation will continue to increase next year as more and more Canadians aged 18 to 64 will become more eligible under this plan. Since then, Mr. Chair, basing ourselves on recent reports and including those of this committee, the Canadian government has provided a certain number of improvements, significant improvements, in order to protect the federal procurement system. We've intensified our systems in order to detect fraud and counter certain unorthodox practices by some suppliers and public servants. PSPC staff continues to work with other government departments on surveillance measures, especially when it has to documenting the requirements as well as decision-making when it comes to procurement and professional services. I would equally mention that PSPC is progressively putting in place a management system to gauge the performance of suppliers in order to continue checking costs and ensuring that this is aligned with quality and the calendar. And as soon as this program will be put in place, there will be a grading system that will be used in future for future submissions. Mr. Chair, in order to come back to the supplementary estimates for PSPC, most of the funds we're asking, which is $620 million, will help fund the implementation of certain essential infrastructure projects. PSPC is asking $102 million in order to put in place a new human resources and pay services, and $9.6 million for the Translation Bureau in order to ensure that both official languages, English and French, remain vital here in Parliament. I'd like to quickly move on to the supplementary estimates for Shared Services Canada, which as the pillar of technology for the Canadian government provides programs and services of a technological nature which Canadians so direly need. We ask for 52 extra million in order to move the budget from $62 million and an additional amount of $2.5 million for telecommunication infrastructure in view of the important G7 summit in Canada in 2025. Mr. Chair, this work only represents some of the important initiatives underway in my portfolio at PSPC, and I would be glad to address your questions and comments.
With Mrs. Block for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to you, Minister, and to your departmental officials for joining us here today. After 9 years of this Liberal government, everything is broken, and you don't need to take my word for it. And I'm going to note that it's especially the procurement system within the Government of Canada. This is not a partisan statement, but a sentiment that is also shared by the Procurement Ombudsman in an article from Blacklock's reporter titled $25 billion Contract System Broken. The Procurement Ombuds said that the Canadian system is kind of near the bottom tier, and that's a quote. He went on to say that the irregularities, such as the sweetheart deals, are symptomatic of a broken system. And on Tuesday, when he appeared before committee, he gave us some examples, such as, and it was quite a list, such as We Charity, ArriveCan, McKinsey, Bait and Switch, and now Indigenous procurement. And as you said in your opening comments, Minister Duclos, Public Services and Procurement Canada works with all departments when it comes to procurement. So billions of dollars are being wasted and going to Liberal insiders who are basically fleecing taxpayers. How much money are taxpayers on the hook for outsourcing this year? Can you provide us with a number?
Well, I'm very glad that we're talking about procurement this morning, because procurement in the federal government represents approximately 400,000 contracts and other activities that, in fact, just dating back 2 years ago, have saved the lives of hundreds of thousands of Canadians because of the immense ability to save, the issues that we were obviously facing in hospitals and across Canada, vaccines and PPEs and other things, and pointing to the successes and the challenges, which you're correctly pointing to, that we're having with the national shipbuilding strategy, defense procurement.
Excuse me, Minister. I didn't point anything out about the national shipbuilding strategy. I asked how many contracts are being outsourced and how much are Canadians paying for those contracts to external consultants.
And I'll come back to that in a moment.
I would actually like you to just provide me with the answer now.
Well, we have, I'll come back to what I thought would be my first point. I'll come back to that second. But on external services procurement, as you will know, we have significantly reduced those dollars because we don't need those investments so much as we did need them during COVID, where the lives and the safety of Canadians were extremely important to the federal government.
Man.
By how much have you decreased the amount of funding being spent on external contractors?
So by approximately 15%, because that's the right thing to do.
15%. What is the dollar amount?
No, translation may have a difficulty if we interact too often
Well,
together.
then just answer the
question. It will be difficult for French-speaking MPs and others listening in the room and outside to follow.
I'm going to interrupt here, and I've stopped your clock. This has come up before repeatedly. If there's issues with the interpreters, they will advise the clerk and I will intervene. Until then, we'll get back, but we appreciate if you could respond to the question. Thank you.
So should I? So as I mentioned, it's about 15%.
An amount in dollars, please.
Well, it depends on departments because we don't control all contracts, but each department has had the objective overall of decreasing reliance on external consultants by about 15%.
So in other words, you don't know the number. We know that the government has blown past its deficit targets. How much of that is due to the increase in outsourcing?
Well, that's a great point that you're making because we are seeing in Canada a fall in inflation, a fall in interest rates, just announced just a few days ago, the fifth in a row, which is the fastest fall in interest rates seen across all comparable developed economies. We're also seeing an increase in employment.
Minister, I know we've had this kind of an exchange in previous committees, and I can appreciate that you really don't want to answer the questions that we're asking here today. But you're really doing us as parliamentarians and Canadians a disservice when you ignore the questions that we're asking on behalf of Canadians. And so I would simply put to you, your government is blowing past its deficit targets. How much of that is due to an increase in outsourcing?
Well, what I'm trying to do respectfully is to support the initial part of your question, which started by saying that everything is broken in Canada, which is inaccurate and I think insulting to most Canadians because, as I said, we are doing really, really good compared to most other countries in the world. Yes, we've had challenges post-pandemic.
In other words, you would say that Canadians have never had it so good. Is that what you're saying?
Canadians don't want to hear that everything is broken, as some people indeed are saying in the House of Commons and elsewhere. That would be inaccurate. And again, it would be insulting to most Canadians to pretend that everything is broken.
So let's get back to what the Procurement Ombudsman said. Do you agree with the Procurement Ombudsman when he talks about the procurement system being broken?
I can turn to official, but I would be surprised if the Procurement Ombudsman had said, like you did, that everything is broken in Canada.
He said, and I quoted it for you, sir, that the Canadian system is kind of near the bottom tier, and he said that the contract system is broken.
I have to interrupt. That is our time. We'll go to Mr. Kuzmierczuk. Perhaps you can address it during that time period. Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much, Minister Duclos, for being here with us once again at OGO Committee. Always excellent talking to you and always wonderful getting your insights. I wanted to talk about a very important program in my community, which is the Canada Dental Care Plan. There are 15,000 people in Windsor, Essex, 15,000 that have received dental care because of our Canada Dental Care Plan. A large proportion of that are seniors. It is incredibly important. And I got a chance to speak with our Seniors Advisory Council just this week, and they emphasized how important the Dental Care Plan was and is for our community. You know, the Conservatives keep opposing the Canada Dental Care Plan, and when they're not opposing it, they're denying that it even exists. To quote the leader of the opposition, he says not a single tooth has been cleaned. Again, 15,000 residents in Windsor, Essex would vehemently disagree with his assessment, if you can call it that. I wanted to ask you if you can provide an update on the rollout of the Canada Dental Care Plan that is helping literally 15,000 residents and seniors in my community already today. Can you provide us with a bit of an update on this program?
This is indeed an example of procurement that is making a huge difference in the lives of millions of Canadians. Now we have 3 million Canadians registered for the Canada Dental Plan. It is indeed worrying and, in fact, upsetting to hear the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, pretend that this does not exist and discourages more seniors from registering into that program. In Conservative ridings, including in MP Duclos' riding, we now have almost 5,000 people having registered, and his leader says it doesn't exist. So imagine that. It doesn't exist. And 5,000 in MP Bloc, almost 5,000 too. Now, they would obviously want to keep promoting that because you have our 15,000 in your own riding here, Eric, because of the advocacy that you are doing, the sharing of information, the encouragement, and not misleading seniors in not registering for the Canada Dental Plan. So it makes a huge difference, and I would encourage you to keep doing your great work.
Chair, just a point of order. What in the world does this have to do with the estimates for the procurement?
We always allow a very wide breadth for discussion. So continue, Minister. Thank you.
The potted plant is on its way, Mr. Chair.
Continue, Minister.
Yes, MP Kuzi, almost 4,000 in her riding, and yet her leader, Pierre Poilievre, says it doesn't exist. So that's very bad. It's funny, perhaps, but it's very bad because it discourages more seniors in those ridings from registering, because there are indeed some issues within Conservative ridings, people not knowing enough about the Canada Dental Care Plan. But overall, it's great news. 93% of providers, dentists, hygienists, and denturologists have registered. I would point that the NDP has played a key role in that. Without the NDP support, this would not have happened, because the Conservatives and the Bloc have done everything they could, including in the estimates that we have voted just this week, to stop this program from going on. And the question is about why does it matter now? In the estimates process, there are important investments to support the enrollment, the development of that important dental care plan. So thank you, Eric, for all that you do.
Well, thank you very much, Minister. And on that point, I noticed my colleague, Mr. Genuis, very eager to join this conversation. So I hope, Minister, you get a chance to ask him personally whether, as the MP for his riding, whether he supports the Canada Dental Care Plan that has provided such a benefit to thousands of residents in his riding. I'd love for you to ask him that question today, if you do get a chance. But I wanted to move on to another subject matter, which is national defense, which is so absolutely critical to Canada. And Minister, this last month, I got a chance to actually tour the HMCS Harry DeWolf, which is the first Arctic and offshore patrol ship, AOPS ship, that was docked in Windsor, Essex. We had the entire community coming out to tour this incredible ship, and I got a chance to meet with Commander John Nicholson and his crew there. Absolutely amazing. And they talked about how these investments in these AOPS and these patrol ships is helping us to defend our Arctic sovereignty and strengthen defense. Can you just talk about the progress on the remaining vessels in this class, any notable achievements or challenges that were encountered in the construction as well, too? Because it was a magnificent ship, incredible crew, and I just wanted to ask a little bit of an update on that, please.
Eric, I'll turn soon to the Deputy Minister Simon, who will provide details. But at a very high level, the national shipbuilding strategy is leading to the creation or sustainment of about 20,000 jobs every year. It's also leading to significant successes on the international stage. We know how important it is in 2024 to be able to fight for the interests of Canadians here in Canada and outside of Canada, their security. We are doing this, obviously, in support to and collaboration with the United States. We have just signed a couple of weeks ago an icebreaker collaboration effort pact with the government of Finland and the United States. This is remarkable. This is going to build on the important progress that we've made in the last years on the national shipbuilding strategy, including building these AOPS and other ice-breaking
I have to interrupt. That is our time. We'll now go to Mrs. Vignola. The floor is yours for 6 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur Duclos.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank Minister Duclos for appearing here today. Thank you for joining us today. Mr. Duclos, my questions, well, they're not mine, but that of the writings across Canada that I received for the dental care services which you mentioned a moment ago. I would mention that it's a good idea for people to be able to get that treatment at all ages. But this question comes from a lady from my riding, and the question is, why should I have a Sun Life card when in Quebec we have civil servants who could use the insurance health card in order to access dental care, especially with children? That was her first question, and I was wondering, could you maybe remind us how much the management contract cost Sun Life, and how many people could have been able to access that care if the amount was transferred to Quebec in respect of their jurisdiction and competencies? Excellent question. Thank you, Julie, for asking that question. The RAMQ, which is the Quebec Health Card, and dental care should have been part of health insurance 50 years ago in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada. It was not done in spite of the hopes back then, which makes it such that dental care is not covered except for really specific segments of the population in Quebec and elsewhere in the country. In Quebec, it's only covered for children under 10, and for certain services in particular, it excludes most preventive care treatments, which are really important for children in their development and health. And for other Quebecers, there's really little coverage. So in Quebec, more than everywhere else across Canada, the need is quite stark, and we noticed it over the past months. And a third of members of this plan are Quebecers. Mr. Duclos, the question from my writing is, why does she need a Sun Life card instead of the health transfers being made to Quebec so that she can be able to use her RAMQ card? For two reasons. The first one is that the Quebec RAMQ does not cover dental care for the majority of Quebecers. And the second reason is that Sun Life is working quite efficiently. 95% of suppliers of providers in Quebec are registered, and dentists, denturologists, and hygiene experts would be quickly paid, and it would be easier for them to take care of these patients, especially the most vulnerable ones who would not be able to be covered. Thank you. So if these health transfers had been made, which is the opinion of my the individual in my writing, they would have been able to use their health insurance card, which wasn't the case in the past. Having said this, in terms of dental care, I still receive emails from people whom, when they report to their dentist office, they are told, well, no, it is not covered because I'm not part of the agreement, and because I was not able to complete the process. It is lengthy and not easy to navigate. So next time, go to another dentist. So they have to look up dentists who are equally loaded with clients. So why is it such that certain dentists and denturologists, and I have one who wrote to me that they've been waiting for 4 months in order to have partial implants because the process is so long that they were advised to meet with a different denturologist. So why is the process so lengthy? Why is it so convoluted? And why is it such that these people, contrary to promises, are not able to get the care which they really need? So most providers who are in Quebec are registered, and too many more enrolling in the program. 3, they're dentists and denturologists and hygienists who already have a significant client base, and they continue to provide services. And in order to find these services, simply type dental care, and this will take you to a web page where you can put in your postal code and find the dentist or denturologist or hygienist that's closest to you. And it's rare that you find one on that web page who is not registered. So we know that there are few of them. And generally, the challenges are mainly for the providers, and they are invited and encouraged to contact Health Canada. Thank you. Now, I'll talk about the fact that Canada Life received the management contracts in terms of administering these insurance, the civil servants insurance plans. Canada Life has made improvements. We'll give you that, but it's their contractor MSH who doesn't seem to understand. Now, retirees from the civil service are equally under Canada Life, like active civil servants. Now, how much did it cost how much did it cost for retirees of the civil service to get the health plan under Canada Life? I'll address your first question, and the second one I'll invite my colleagues to address more specifically. Now, with regard to the improvements that you've realized over the past months, it's among other reasons the fact that you pointed to some of the difficulties that we had in the system from the onset, and most of these challenges have been addressed for the most part, and there's still some challenges, and this is frustrating, especially for those abroad. We encourage all MPs, like you did, to highlight these issues so that Canada Life can do its job. How much it costs exactly, I'm not sure.
Session, Mr. Boulris, go ahead, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for appearing here today with your entire army that's here to support you. I'm quite interested in the fact that the Bloc Québécois is asking questions on the dental plan, because were it not for the NDP and negotiations to force the government to provide this dental care, it would never have happened. And I'm proud that over 1 million Quebecers are now enrolled in this dental care plan, and over 325,000 have already accessed dentists and received dental care, and paid in part or in total by this federal program. And I'm really proud of this, because this is something that at the NDP we really pushed hard for, contrary to the Bloc. I'd like to ask a question on the digital portal at the Border Services Agency. CBC Radio informed us that it cost close to $500 million for service that concerns customs and import duties on certain goods and services, and that this portal in a month reported 20 inconsistencies in a very short time. And now we have $500 million of public funds that were invested, and it's not working. And this is something that had been in place since 2010. So it's been 14 years that the federal government is working on this, and it costs over $500 million, and it's still not working. It's broken. Thank you, Mr. Boulris, Alexandre. Now, on the dental care plan, very quickly, you're right to state that your support was critical, and we would like to laud your efforts on that file, and we want to mention that it's not complete so far, because from 2025, 1 million additional Quebecers aged 18 to 64 will be eligible for this dental care plan. So there's a lot of work to do in the first half of 2025, and we appreciate your continuous collaboration. Now, with regard to the portal for the Canada Border Services Agency, you're right to state that it's a critical service that has cost quite a lot of money over the past years. This is a system that is absolutely necessary, because the former 35-year-old system was close to crumbling at any moment. And we have infrastructure, and when you set up infrastructure, there's always problems and hiccups from the beginning, and it's important to recognize and acknowledge these problems. I mean, we've been on this since 2010. We're in 2024. It's been 14 years, but we started rolling out the program only a few weeks ago. So in spite of all the efforts that were made, and I'd maybe ask the team to chime in, there's still some challenges with reliability and clarity in the system, which are currently being addressed in real time, and also questions that people are asking on the ground, because it's a new system and people need some time to acclimatize. And the response time for the questions that are addressed is not sufficient enough. So we need to invest more in that, and while waiting for employees to, hone their skills. And yes, there's been hiccups for the first weeks, and there's been 5 million declarations that were processed over the past weeks, and this system needs to be able to address that demand. And if you like, Alexandra, I can ask other civil servants to chime in. So 22 breakdowns in several hours in a month for something that costs more than $500 million is unacceptable for most people. So Scott would probably recognize that it's not entirely under his purview, but I think maybe you can discuss further how we address this. Thank you very much. The system which we replaced was 36 years old, so it was important for border services to have a new system, and this has reduced significant amount of risk for the infrastructure. But for operational systems, my partner from the Canada Border Service agencies can address this. But on the part of Shared Services Canada, we will support border services. We support them every day to maintain the systems in operation, but I do not have the details of the issues with the system that were delivered. Thank you very much. My other question for the time that I still have left for this first round, $441 million that you're asking for supplementary appropriation. So 46% of that money will be channeled to contractors, whereas your government committed to reduce our dependency on external services. In spite of that, you continue to have a significant reliance on contractors and subcontractors and external services. How do you explain this 46% of consultants, $391 million? That's quite a lot, no? Well expressed. We know that this dependency was really necessary during the COVID years, and right now it's quite significant, and we're trying to shrink this by 15% this year, but we need to do even more in the coming months and coming years.
Oh, Mrs. Kusi.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, et bienvenue, Monsieur Ministre.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to the Minister for appearing. This is our committee. Thank you for appearing this committee this morning.
Found committing fraud against the government. Last time you were here in November, the number was 7. How many is that number at today, please?
Merci beaucoup pour la question.
Thank you very much for the question. I am happy that we can talk about the procurement system, because this plays a key role for Canada, workers and businesses, and it's really key for government and Canadians. And for such a system, I'm waiting for the number from you. You are the minister, so in my view, you should be able to tell us how much. And yes, you're entitled to knowing the exact numbers and the up-to-date figures. Quickly, because I have many questions.
The respect we're supposed to afford other members of our House, including ministers, and so I would just remind Ms.
I appreciate that. Yell. Respect goes both ways. There was a very clear question. I think taxpayers and MPs deserve a very clear answer.
Point of order.
Continue.
Point of order on what?
It's more about the yelling at the minister than the question. Thank you.
I'm sure Mrs. Kusi will take that under advisement, but continue, Mrs. Kusi.
Yeah, it is a very clear question, Minister. How many cases of fraud, please? Tell Canadians. Just the number. Do you know the number?
Et si je comprends bien votre question, la réponse.
If I understand your question, yes, I already asked you in English and in French. What is the number, please? The answer is 7 cases, 3 that were announced last spring, 1 that added in July, and 3 others over the past weeks.
Comme vous le suggérez.
Civil servants, as you suggested, and as is important, are continuing to do their work on integrity. It's much easier now with the electronic procurement system and with information sharing. Thank you. And what's the value of these 7 contracts, these fraudulent contracts? What's the amount, the dollar amount? For the specific amount, Deputy Minister, do you have the number?
Would you?
Donc on pourrait vous attendre.
Every effort that needs to be put into this is being put into this. Obviously, this is a politically independent process. We wouldn't want politicians, whoever they may be, to undermine the ability of the independent public service officers to do that job. So it's not a matter of how many I think there should be.
Okay, so you've said that you don't want to undermine public service officers doing their job. Then, in your opinion, please, Minister, do you believe all of the scandals, including the billions lost to CEBA, which we just found out about last week through the Auditor General, as well as the millions spent on ArriveCan, as well as McKinsey, that the procurement officials, then, you're saying, are the ones who Canadians are to blame for this large number, this millions of dollars, which I believe it's actually significantly more than that. But what do you believe it's your officials to blame then, Minister?
You're asking whether we should be blaming officials?
I'm asking you what you think, why it's currently $4.5 million for 7 contracts. What do you think? Why do you think? And I think the number is way more than that, and we've seen these numbers increase consistently, whether we're talking contracts, fraud, the debt, the deficit. But in this case, the fraudulent contracts of 7, why do you think that's occurring, please?
So, as you're correctly suggesting, officials have the obligation to do whatever they can in an independent manner, not focus on politics and politicians, to do whatever they need to do to find out instances of fraud, and if there are such instances of fraud, to do whatever they need to do, including with the RCMP and other law enforcing institutions, to collect and recollect the amount that would have been paid inappropriately.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned politicians. Minister, I just wanted your ideas as to what you believe your leader, the Prime Minister, is doing to the Finance Minister. We've seen 2 days of leaks in the Globe and Mail, and we know now that he has forced his radical spending on your Finance Minister, Minister Freeland, and that he has forced her to break the $40 billion deficit. And in fact, we just found out today, just today, that he is begging Mark Carney, carbon tax Carney, conflict of interest Carney, to serve as the next finance minister of Canada. So your Prime Minister, who actually is overseeing all of this procurement, all of this fraud under CEBA, under ArriveScan, I have some sympathy for you, that he is now going to oust the first female finance minister in Canadian history. Do you think that's right?
Well,
I apologize, Minister. That is our time, but perhaps you can respond in Mr. Sousa's 5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Sousa, please.
Minister, thank you for being here, and apologies for some of the antics across the way. And the disrespect is really unfortunate, because I do appreciate, I think most Canadians appreciate the work that's being done to try to bring transparency and greater order to procurement. Thousands and thousands of contracts are done by the Canadian government, and some are not done properly, as we have investigated, and as members of the team have ventured to correct. And my question, I have 3 actually. One is in regards to the Canada Land Bank. In my community of Mississauga Lakeshore, 1 Port Street, Canada Lands is the property owner of a beautiful property marina in the area. A lot of revitalization has been done in the community, and they're very grateful for that and continuing. And the residents are eager to see this revitalization. So I'm asking you if you can talk about how your department is working to convert underutilized and vacant properties into housing.
Thank you so much, Charles, and thank you for pointing to the Federal Lands Initiative in your riding and across Canada. We know and feel how stressful it is for Canadians to go through the housing crisis. The good news is that we have in Budget 2024 the most important housing investments ever seen in the history of Canada. That is going to transform the lives of millions of Canadians. We're going to build millions of homes, many of them, and hopefully most of them affordable. And that comes through the in the leadership of PSPC. As you said, PSPC is an important supporter of that initiative, but more broadly, PSPC is key. We have $34 billion in procurement activities every year, 400,000 contracts and amendments. We have 800,000 active security clearances every year, and we have a large number of them being checked and reviewed every year too. But coming back to the Federal Lands Initiative, the Federal Lands Initiative and the Canada Lands Company in particular, they're going to build approximately 29,000 new homes in the next 5 years on federal lands. And that's in addition to and in complementary to the Federal Lands Bank initiative that you have noted. We now have 83 properties in that bank as of now. We started in August, and that we're going to build approximately 35,000 new homes in the years to come. And we hope that your leadership and the leadership of other MPs around the room will help connect communities, mayors, councillors, not-for-profit housing providers to speed up the construction of those new homes.
Thank you, Minister. Another issue of concern in my community, and just 2 days ago, there was a town hall regarding health, guns and safety issues, crime. And a lot of reforms have been done by the federal government to try to strengthen those issues and trying to persuade now the provincial authorities to proceed more effectively in enforcing the law. But it's clear to me that there are a number of measures that the government has taken to support strong gun control measures, right? And I'm actually quite appalled to see members of the opposition working with the gun lobby in an attempt to weaken those very gun laws. And we're talking about assault rifles and so forth. Can you explain how this government is taking assault-style firearms in our communities through the buyback program that is, in fact, part of the PSPC? And, Minister, regardless of what the members of the opposition are saying, it is part of the work that you are doing at PSPC with regards to the gun buy program.
And indeed, it belongs partly to PSPC and public safety as well. A quick reminder, in 2020, we banned about 1,500 models of weapons that have no place in Canada, in civil society
Chair,
in Canada.
Can you ask them to please settle down? We're trying to hear the answer.
Are you referring to the minister or
I'm referring to the opposition? The opposite.
Okay.
And Chair, I don't appreciate that as well. I mean, it's really unfortunate.
You're right, because I believe...
Sorry, Minister, just I'll pause the time. Colleagues, if you allow...
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I think Mr. Sousa already heard the answers during practice, though, didn't he?
Yeah, not a point of order.
Oh,
Minister, please continue, and go ahead, Mr. Sousa.
I think it's a good gesture on your part, Charles, for everyone to be able to hear that story, because it's going to be important in the weeks to come as we unroll the phase 1 of the buyback program from shops, and then the phase 2 from individuals who legitimately and totally legally bought these assault-style rifles years ago. But these weapons are designed for wars. They are designed to kill as many people as possible in as little time as possible. That's why we outlawed 1,500 models of those firearms in 2020. Last Friday, we added another 324 models because the gun industry is very creative in designing and then producing new assault-style weapons. That is why this week we're putting into place a firearms reference table, which will automatically update that list of prohibited assault-style weapons.
Thank you,
and my
gentlemen.
department,
that is our
in collaboration with others, will be there to unroll
Madam
the
Vignola,
procurement,
please.
the buyback
Sorry,
program.
Minister, our time is up. Madam Vignola, the floor is yours.
In other words, shut up. Stop talking.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
No one cares about your taking away
Mr.
of rights.
Chair. Very quickly, I'd like to remind you the first statement that I mentioned during my first 6 minutes. The dental care is good, but interference is a major difference. Having said this, I put a question earlier which we didn't have the time to cover. The contract with Canada Life for dental care with government retirees, how much did it cost? Well, I know that we're hearing a lot about interference. There's no interference. Rather, there's help that's provided to the Quebec government because some people can't go to the dentist. I'm sorry, this was not a question. It was a comment. My question is, how much did it cost the government to secure a dental care plan for civil service retirees? I'll continue in a positive light. As you mentioned, it's important for Quebecers, and in my opinion, there's no interference, but rather support to the Quebec government. And for the exact amount, I will refer to the Deputy Minister. Well, I'll get back to the clerk with a specific answer, specific number. Thank you. Now, very often I go to the previous Canada buys and in the markets section, I see that there's an opportunity for cities, municipalities, and even universities like that of British Columbia, like Concordia. Why is it that there's no more opportunities for the government now? Taxpayers not only pay for offers from Canada, but for all that is published across Canada. Well, this is an invitation. It is not an obligation that is placed on provinces and certainly not municipalities. We're inviting them to take advantage, to avail themselves of this website that is already in place and that brings together multiple thousands of service providers across the country. Very quickly, recently, our country mentioned the number of persons per riding with dental care plans, and we found the numbers, but by province. How can citizens have access to the number as the government per riding? Well, as a matter of fact, we have easy access, as you mentioned, to data per province, and two, we have internal data that we're trying to fine tune because it's not very specific yet, and we're trying to look at a number of people enrolled per riding, and we're trying to fine tune this in order to make it available to all MPs. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Minister, you were kind enough by mentioning that the dental care plan was help to the Quebec government. I'll go further and say that this program helps Quebecers first and foremost, and that was our priority and our first mission, to help the Quebec government and also help people who did not have access to dentists. You talked about the issue of housing in your introductory statement. You talked about the fact that the federal government could help with long-term leases in order to help build affordable homes. How much money are we talking about on how many pieces of land and affordable homes, but how affordable are they? I know it's many questions, three of them. Well, all very relevant questions, and it would be difficult to address all of them accurately. Now, for the number of properties right now in the lands bank that's available on the CIT website, if you go to federal lands website, you see already available lands. There are 3 in my riding, and there's equally some probably in yours. 83 that in addition to the 3 updates over the past month, with an objective of over 35,000 homes built, a good chunk of them affordable, and with amphitheatric leases. I mean, what proportion of those are affordable? And when we talk about affordability, is it based on people's revenue? Is it based on the average rent cost in the region? It depends on local definitions. In Quebec, for instance, we have 2 definitions. There's one depending on people's revenue, and the other one on the average rent amount in the community. So it depends on the cities where we will be constructing these homes, and there will be additional support from the Canadian government, because making these lands available free of charge to construction or partners working in non-profits, cooperatives, and low-cost housing businesses, making these lands available free of charge in the long term for them is really interesting, because it reduces the cost involved in purchasing those lands. And this is additional support in the sense that if we want to build really affordable homes, so social housing in particular, and also green housing and close to public transport amenities, as well as all the different amenities, it requires additional budget. So are you going to invest in that light? Yes, we will invest, not just to make these lands available, but even go further and have more affordable homes.
Good to see you, Minister, and wishing you well in the upcoming Shuffle sweepstakes. You mentioned at the beginning a grading system, and I want to ask, if you were to give a letter grade to the effectiveness and integrity of the procurement system over the last 9 years, what letter grade would you give?
Well, thank you, MP Generous. We see each other in many circumstances over the last week. I appreciate the fact that you're asking good questions on procurement and implicitly recognizing
Just
that,
get to the question,
I'll appreciate
man.
when you answer them.
Yes, I'm coming to that, obviously.
I doubt it. Go
so
ahead.
the fact that you're asking those questions about integrity also suggests that you value.
Sir, just give me a letter grade, though. Like it's not a difficult question. I'll get to the difficult ones later. But how would you rate your performance, the performance of the government's procurement department over the last 9 years? Just give me a letter grade.
Well, in the last 9 years, I can speak obviously to the number of thousands of lives that were saved during COVID-19 because of vaccine.
I'll give you 10 seconds to give me a letter grade. Go ahead.
So yes, you can also speak about the national shipbuilding strategy, which is sustaining the jobs of about 20,000 workers every year.
Okay, time's up. Honestly, if I were the minister and I had your record, I would not want to give a letter grade either. Minister, if a third-party auditor flags that there's fraud on a particular procurement file and recommends that it be referred to the RCMP, what should the government do in that case? Another fairly easy question, I think.
What it should do is that exactly what you're probably also thinking is that it should take those allegations very seriously, and expect and demand that public service, independently of political interference, do the job that they need to do.
And what is that job? If an independent auditor says there's fraud, we think it should be referred to the RCMP. The public service should then refer it to the RCMP, right?
Yeah. Well, the public service
should they
is a big not every.
Sir, we're still on the easy stuff. If a third-party auditor says that hypothetically a procurement file involving the Canadian Healthcare Agency involved fraud, and that third-party auditor says it in a meeting with multiple public servants from multiple departments, saying we think it involves fraud, we think it should be referred to the RCMP. Should they take it seriously and refer it to the RCMP, or should they take it seriously and try to bury it? What would you suggest?
Well, you spoke about hypothetical, and hypothetical cases are not truly useful cases to discuss in such general terms. I think you need to be more specific as to what exactly you have in mind.
Very specific, man.
Okay, I have in mind the case this committee heard about this week from Gary Hartle, who was an independent auditor who brought a room full of public servants evidence of Indigenous identity fraud on the government years ago, and recommended that the case be referred to the RCMP. The government decided, in his words, they didn't want any trouble and decided to bury it instead of referring it to the RCMP. Do you think that was a good idea or a bad idea?
Well, MP Generous, this is a great question, which I heard you ask.
And I look forward to a great answer.
Exactly just a few days ago to Minister Aidu, and she provided all the answers that you were correctly expecting of her, because it's in her file, it's her department. You know that because you asked her directly those same questions.
PSPC officials were in the room, sir. Your officials were in the room. I think at a basic level in terms of setting the tone, now would be a good time for you to advise your officials and the public that when they become aware of instances of fraud, they should refer that fraud to the RCMP. And you seem unwilling to say that.
Je peux le dire en français si en anglais ça fonctionne moins bien. Mais
I can say it in French if it's not working into English. We had a meeting where you were present, Mr.
Such a smug response.
With Minister Aidu, and you asked exactly the same question, and she provided you with the proper responses. So if you want to have a conversation with Ms. Ailu, you can do that. But you had that conversation a few months ago.
Welcome you. Neither. C'est une question très simple. Si c'est une...
It's a really simple question. So if it's a case of fraud...
And since your officials were in the room, should they have given that information to the RCMP or buried it? And I wonder, frankly, how many other cases are there? But can you just clearly tell your officials and the public that instances of fraud, when officials become aware of them, should be referred to the RCMP? Yes or no?
répondu à cette question à plusieurs reprises.
I've already addressed the question on several occasions, Mr. Alois, and Ms. Naidu addressed the question on several occasions as well. The same question a few days ago. I think maybe you just have to
cut him
return
off, Garnet,
and see what
cut
her
him off.
response was, and it'll be easy to understand.
Give a simple yes to a very simple question. That's truly unbelievable.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll go to Mrs. Atwin to finish up the hour, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Minister and officials, for joining us today. I'll switch gears a little bit. I'm really proud to represent a vibrant bilingual community. So I'm from New Brunswick, which is our only bilingual constitutionally protected province. Vote 1B includes $9.6 million for the Translation Bureau to provide linguistic services to Parliament. Can you speak, about the importance about the Translation Bureau for minority language communities like those in New Brunswick, but also just in general the importance of interpretation services for the workings of Parliament?
Merci beaucoup, Jenica.
Thank you very much. And we know that you are a proud representative of your riding and that you have that ability to be a proud representative of the diversity of gender in your ridings. It can be felt in your values and in your action. Yes, we are privileged to have a really bilingual country where people who prefer working and especially here in the Canadian government, you are entitled to express yourself in the official language of your choice. And the investments in the Translation Bureau, which are part and parcel of the expenditure estimates, are really crucial. And I know that some of the interpreters are probably following today. We know how crucial their work is and how difficult it is in our work. And we're grateful and the need to have the necessary tools to do their job properly, including the tools to protect them and protect their hearing health. And in addition to this, as you mentioned, it allows the Francophones who live in your riding and other Francophones across the country, especially those here in the House of Commons, to be able to do their work and to support their communities.
Where MP Duclos was able to speak in her Inuktitut language, and we've had access to translation services. Can you speak to any efforts to expand access to Indigenous languages at the interpretation level?
An equally excellent question. I would like to provide you with really specific response. Madam Deputy Minister, can you provide a response?
Well as increasing access to Indigenous interpreters, working with various First Nations and communities to bring people to Ottawa or look at hybrid parliament in a way that will have better and increased access. Thank you.
Excellent. And also, Budget 2024 explained about how labor shortages and resource constraints have strained translation services. Can you speak to how the Translation Bureau is working to resolve those labor shortages in the medium to long term?
That's the most important one is to support those translators that we're currently working for the federal government and to ensure their safety and their health in particular. The second piece is to assist other organizations train new interpreters and translators. Just a few weeks ago, I was able to announce in my own city an important partnership with Université Laval that was going to lead to them creating a new micro program on interpretation and translation. Up to 10 new students will graduate every year. This is great for my city, obviously, but we're doing similar things in other parts of Canada so that we have a new and continuing flow of new talents and people into supporting the translation and interpretation services here in the House of Commons in the Parliament.
Excellent, thank you. And just with my remaining time, I've got about a minute left. Maybe I will return to the Indigenous procurement piece because it's certainly it's been a hot topic here in the House of Commons. But I'm also, I listened to a lot of the witness testimony, and it's about improving access for Indigenous businesses. Can you speak to how PSBC is encouraging participation of Indigenous businesses?
This has to be the top priority because there are about 2,900 Indigenous businesses registered in the Indigenous Business Directory. although we know that there are approximately 60,000 Indigenous businesses in Canada, so there are many Indigenous businesses have yet to be able to support the needs of the federal government and therefore to support their workers and their communities by participating fully in the procurement system. So we have Procurement Assistance Canada, we have an equity plan, an engagement strategy, which is not entirely, but somewhat focused on reaching out to, informing, encouraging, and supporting Indigenous businesses across Canada, including in your own riding.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Minister. We will excuse you. Thanks for joining us again. Have a wonderful Christmas. We're going to suspend for about 2 minutes to excuse the Minister and get the next witnesses set up.
Okay. So that's it for this committee. We're going to be live for question period in 2 hours. So I'm just check to see if here Sophie has made any out-of-country real estate purchases lately. I don't think you can do an I-tip on someone's personal finances, but I'm sure some journalists could dig and find that somehow. But yeah, question period is going to be pretty good today. You guys know we don't go live on Fridays. We'll be covering the health committee afterwards. Your coffee fund. Oh, thank you, Mr. G. Really appreciate you. So yeah, we're going to be covering the health committee after. Someone just asked about the ethics committee. I don't think it's going to be decent. So we'll be covering health because what's his name's going to be there? Holland, MP Holland. They're having like H&R Block and CSIS and stuff in ethics committee. It's not going to be anything that's interesting. If you want a good laugh, check out a video called Clint Webb from an old skit comedy troupe. It's an American but hilarious. Okay, I'll check that out. I will see you guys in 2 hours for question period. So appreciate you guys tuning in and watching. There wasn't too many people this morning. It's usually kind of how it is in the mornings, but we should pick it up in the afternoon for question period and committee after. So I'll see you guys soon. Cheers, guys.